As parents, we do everything we can to keep our children safe, but most of us don't realize that there is a hidden killer lurking in our medicine cabinets. The very medicines that are prescribed by your doctor to make you well can be deadly when taken by a child. 1 out of every 5 homes in your neighborhood has a child who has abused a prescription drug, and the majority of these drugs are stolen from unsuspecting parents. You've heard Josh talk about the need to secure potentially dangerous medications in the home. That's why we've joined forces with him to bring you an exclusive offer on the Rx DrugSAFE fingerprint medicine lockbox to help keep your family protected. With the Rx DrugSAFE, your finger is the key to safety, providing convenient access to the prescribed patient while keeping your drugs locked away and your children safe. Visit us at rxdrugsafe.com and save $50 when you enter TOLLEY at checkout and help us fight the war against prescription drug abuse.
Last month, we had a caller that really hit home for a lot of listeners. Really tugged on the heartstrings of many of you. We got the emails, the tweets, the Facebook messages, and it was a young man who called in with the problem of being addicted to drugs. And you know, one of the sad things is that this is not a situation where it's just bad guys and all that sort of stuff you see in the movie. A lot of good people get addicted to a lot of bad things. And his call really touched a lot of us, and I wanted to do a follow-up to that. For a long time, you've been listening to this show, and we've been airing an ad for the Rx DrugSAFE. And it's a great product. I'm glad that you're buying it, and I'm glad the ad is running. But this is one of those products that literally helps people. It changes lives. So we're going to do something special. We have 3 guests joining us. We have Lorraine Yarde, who is the CEO of Rx DrugSAFE. And we have Kris Kesterson, who is the caller who called in that all of you were so touched by. And we also have the director of the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drug Control, Darrell Weaver. And we're going to have a conversation. And I know, 4 people at once on radio can be tricky, but everybody's going to do a great job. And we're going to start with Lorraine. So, Lorraine, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, Josh. Good morning. How are you?
I am great. I'm great. Thank you for joining us today. Lorraine, let's start with what this DrugSAFE is, what it does, why it's important, and most importantly, how this connected you with Kris.
Every day, over 100 people die from prescription drugs in the U.S. That's more than are killed by guns, more than die from cocaine and heroin combined. So it's a huge problem. Basically, I've been working with fingerprint technology for several years. Back in the mid-2000s, I had a company that put it into everyday consumer products like front door locks and garage door openers. And when I heard about this problem, I felt that there was, probably a better way that we can address the issue by providing, patients who are prescribed these drugs and use them on a daily basis with a tool, and we apply the fingerprint technology to this lockbox, and we call it the Rx DrugSAFE. And it essentially allows the prescribed users to safely keep the drugs away from kids in the home, but it allows the prescribed users to conveniently access the drugs when they have to take their prescribed medication. A lot of the time, people are in chronic pain. They take opioids, they take depressants, stimulants, and these drugs can be deadly if they're used by somebody who they're not prescribed for. So the technology is very easy to use. You don't have to use a key. You don't have to remember a PIN code. Your finger becomes your key. It's a unique biometric identifier. So that's what we've done. We've taken the technology and we've applied it into this product, which we believe can help save lives by cutting off supply at the source. Most of the drugs get into the hands of kids. 70% of them are stolen from parents and family members by kids. So the simple step of locking up your medications in the home can really have a significant positive impact.
Did you say 70 as in 70, or did you say 17 as in 17?
No, 70. The statistics show, and these are independent surveys done by groups like the National Institute of Health and the CDC. 1 in 5 kids has admitted to abusing a prescription drug. That's a national survey that was done. And 70% of them steal the drugs from the medicine cabinets of unsuspecting family members, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, or even a family friend. They'll go into the bathroom, they'll open the medicine cabinet, they'll open the bottle, they'll take a couple of pills out, and that's where it starts. And I think that's what connected me with Kris, because that's Chris's story. It was very simple for him to steal a couple of pills from the medicine cabinet without his parents even noticing. And that's the problem.
And Kris was a caller into this show, and he's here with us too. Kris, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Kind of give us the brief synopsis of your history with drug abuse, because I think that's really powerful in this discussion.
Yeah, it all started around the age of 13. I started stealing from my stepfather's medicine cabinet, and I wasn't even taking them at first. My friends told me what the good ones were to take, so I stole some hydrocodone, name brand Lortab, which is a opiate medication, and that's how it started. I started stealing from the medicine cabinet, unbeknownst to him, until he noticed that they were all gone.
What was going through your mind at the time? Like, did you know what these drugs would do? Were there friends that were guiding you, telling you which drugs to take, or did you just see an open opportunity and you went for it?
Yeah, it was a lot of talk with my friends. They told me that they were good, and because I was a recreational pot user at the time, and we would take these on the weekends and get high, but we had no idea about the consequences of dependency at the time. That was the last thing on my mind.
Your current situation right now, are you still struggling with this addiction? I hear that addicts always struggle with it, but are you on the up and up? Is it still a challenge for you?
Yes, it's still a challenge. I'm on a medication now that's used for maintenance.
Okay.
It's a medication where they taper you down. They cut your dosage down because you can't just stop taking these drugs all at once, because you'll go through withdrawal symptoms. So the medication I take right now is called Suboxone, and it has just enough opiate in it to where you can function throughout your day. And it also has another chemical in it that they add to it. That way the medication can't be abused.
Let me ask you a question. If this DrugSAFE was in the home that you grew up in, where you started stealing the drugs, if this DrugSAFE would have been in any other location, any other homes that you started to feed your addiction, would that have prevented you? Would it stopped you? Would it possibly deterred you from even getting started down this road in the first place?
Oh, there's no doubt that it would have deterred me, yes. Stopped completely, I don't know if, later in life I may have came across them and, taken a liking to them. But who's to say? But I know for a fact that, if they had been locked up, that I wouldn't have had access to them, and it definitely would have deterred me.
See, and that's why I think this is a really important topic. We're about to go into a break, and then when we come back, we'll talk to Director Darrell Weaver. But to me, this issue is more than just a product that's on this show. Please do not take this interview as something that's like, oh, well, you're helping them sell the product. No. The reason why I want to help them sell the product is because this literally is a matter of life and death. We'll continue this conversation right after the break. Don't go anywhere, folks. In 10 years, 137% of overdose, or 137% increase in overdose deaths. 80% of those from prescription drugs. Absolutely crazy. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm a grandparent of some great kids, doesn't matter. Either your grandkids or friends of your grandkids or a neighbor's kids or even a supplier, vendor, the painter you have come over to your house. You can become a victim of this very easily, and it's so preventable. That's why we're talking about this. So let's go to Director Weaver. Now, sir, obviously this is your expertise. I mean, this is what you deal with is drug abuse, drugs, and all that sort of stuff for the great state of Oklahoma. What's your take on this? Not only this issue, but the situation with prescription drugs and their prevalence in the United States. I mean, we've seen such an increase of a drug for everything, from sneezing to scratching your head. I mean, there's a drug for everything. Does that add to the problem?
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh, first off, for having me on. It's really a silent cancer in Oklahoma, prescription drug abuse. I said this in an op-ed piece in 2010, and it really has taken the whole nation somewhat by surprise and overcome many states. You have to remember that I try to frame these issues and look at them in four ways. Just very quickly, when you look at drugs, you look at their acceptability, their risk, how risk adverse you have to be to obtain the drug, thirdly, the pricing of drugs, and obviously all three of those areas fall into this very easily having a problem with prescription drugs. But the final one, the final of the four, is the one that we're trying to deal with as we speak, and that is availability. Availability of the drug, of any drug, is always an issue. And we started a very robust program putting these little mailbox-type objects in our police departments about 3 years ago. It's the only program like this in the United States, and it's a standardization of a take-back, getting unused, unwanted prescriptions out of the cabinets of Oklahoma. We have 173 boxes, and we've taken back 37 tons. But the problem is, what about those ones that have them in their house? To me, the vulnerable population, such as our elderly, that need those prescriptions, and they're in their houses. And as we've duly noted on this program, and it's well written, and everyone's very much aware of, people will come in a very secretive, covert manner and get these drugs illegally, if you would, out of the cabinets. So with these lock boxes, we're now about to put out 500 lock boxes in the homes. We're really targeting the elderly to try to do this. So and I want to commend our guests too from really battling this addiction. I mean, that's what this is about, trying to get people in a very productive lifestyle.
I want to second that. To be able to come forward and say, you know what, I struggled with this, I had a problem with this, and then to do what he needs to do to get over it is so commendable. Thank you for being brave, Kris. Kris, let's go back to you then. I mean, let's say you were talking to parents, to grandparents, to anybody really who's taking prescription drugs. What would you say to them? What would your warning to them be?
I think every abusable narcotic should actually come with a safe of some type, because it's just, I've had friends that have broken into grandmother's houses on multiple occasions to get their drugs, unbeknownst to the grandparent. They don't even notice that their drugs are missing, because they rarely use them. So I would just urge people to, if they have anything, a lot of people don't even know what's in their medicine cabinet. And and especially with the painkillers, because 3 out of 4 of the overdoses caused in 2009 were due to painkillers, opiates.
Director, let's get you to weigh in on that. I mean, I'm thinking right now of people who I know in my own life. They're genuinely hurt, so they get prescribed painkillers. They don't need them all, so they're sitting on a shelf. They totally forget they're there. They're there 6-8 months. Is that a risk?
Well, absolutely. I think it's noted, and it needs to be even more expressed, is that this is no respecter of persons. I mean, this is affecting not only lives in Oklahoma, but across our nation. This is not people that you would think. These are working, functional adults that get involved. They have a shoulder surgery, they have a knee surgery, a hip replacement, and then they wake up one day and they're addicted. So I think it's no respecter of persons. But what happens is that our healthcare industry many times is overrun, especially in rural areas. So they don't have time to see these patients. So there's a tendency to overprescribe at times, and so that it won't overburden them in their practice. And this gives rise to, you get an abundance, if you would, of these narcotics sitting in shelves. But I'd submit to you that many times young people do not know, although they're targeting the hydrocodones, the oxycodones, and things of that nature, Xanax. But you have to remember, sometimes they do these farm parties where they just take it out of the shelves and out of the cabinets arbitrarily and put it in a bowl and just pull out of it. And I'd submit to you, even though we're targeting as a drug agency in Oklahoma, we're targeting controlled dangerous substances. I submit to you, even a blood pressure medicine in the wrong hands could harm a child or harm someone. So anything that's not being used, we had a prescription in the late 1960s that came out of one of our take-back programs. And I jokingly tell people when I speak that there's better drugs out there than was made in 1960. So we're a generation, many of us, that do not like to throw things away. We think we've all got a junk drawer where there's too many screws in there where we could go down to the local store and buy for 25 cents, but yet they're stacking up. So I think we can't let our junk drawer become our medicine cabinets, and we've got to get rid of them. If not, we have to make them secure.
Yeah, that's a great point. Lorraine, let's get back to you for a second. Obviously, this is a product that's very near and dear to your heart. It's a product that's affecting a lot of lives. What do you have to say to those people out there who are taking those prescription drugs? Just like I asked Kris, they're taking those prescription drugs for good reason. What do you say to those people who think, well, this is never something that's going to affect me, this issue?
Anybody can be susceptible to this kind of problem. So, and it's not just teenagers either. I mean, we haven't even mentioned accidental poisonings by toddlers. Every year,
great point.
Tens of thousands of younger children, toddlers, end up in the emergency room because they've accidentally ingested, medications that could be harmful to them. And as Director Weaver pointed out, it's not just painkillers; it could be any kind of medication. Cough syrup is another thing that you find that kids will abuse, and toddlers can drink down because it tastes nice, it's sweet, and it could be deadly. So I think the important point to mention is any household that has these medications should think about being responsible, practicing responsible medication management within that environment. With a product like the Rx DrugSAFE, it's one easy extra step to secure your medications. We're not asking people to take a key out every day and unlock a safe and then lock it back up again. We're not asking them to remember a PIN code. Their fingerprint is their key. So the safe will only allow access to an authorized user. It's a very, very simple thing to do. Swipe your finger on the safe, take out your medications, put them back in again, and they're secured. And that will just eliminate the risk and eliminate the access. And Director Weaver made a point about accessibility. It's because these drugs are so available that the issue is so prevalent these days. So it's just one extra simple step to lock those medications up that can make a huge difference.
All right, we are talking to Lorraine Yarde from Rx DrugSAFE. Kris, who is a brave caller who touched a lot of hearts last time he called into the show to talk about this problem, and the director of Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drug Control, Director Darrell Weaver. Now, this is for either Director Weaver or Lorraine. You guys can pick which one wants to respond to it. But we've had a caller on this show who used to be a former investigator himself, I believe in the state of Texas, who talked about how a lot of drug abuse, specifically prescription drug abuse, happens at the hands of nurses, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, stuff like that. I would think, wouldn't a drug safe like this be a perfect additional safety measure in places like assisted living, where there is that person who comes by once in a while to check up on these individuals, but it's not as highly regulated and watched as, say, a nursing home or a hospital?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're applying the technology to other types of products that can be suited to those environments. Just to give you some statistics about that, because you bring up a very good point, Josh. Healthcare facilities in general, hospitals, and drug diversion is a huge problem. It's not just kids that are stealing. There are professionals out there, nurses, who actually have issues with prescription drug abuse, and they will go out there and they'll steal drugs from unsuspecting elderly people. And I think it's about $4 billion a year overall is lost from these types of environments. And assisted living can fall into that because it's an environment where often you have somebody who's, as you said, is coming in and checking in on these residents from time to time, and more often than not, they're a caregiver, they're a qualified nurse. I believe they're required to provide some type of a lockbox. But what happens is because older people don't necessarily want to use a key, or often they forget PIN codes, if the lockbox has that kind of a locking mechanism, they won't use it because they need to be able to get access to those drugs. So more often than not, the drugs are just left either in a drawer or in the medicine cabinet, which is the case in most homes. So yeah,
that's a great point.
The technology needs to be applied and incorporated into those kinds of environments as well. I want to commend Director Weaver for taking the initiative in Oklahoma to recognize that the home environment is a problem as well. And I mentioned before, he's going to be giving these days to elderly people in his community. Most states are addressing the issue in different ways. They have prescription drug monitoring systems that oversees how many drugs are being dispensed by doctors. It kind of pinpoints things like doctor shopping if patients are going to different doctors and getting medications prescribed from different doctors. It highlights that. And there's tighter controls at the pharmacy level as well. You know, they're overseeing what pharmacies are dispensing. But very little is done to address the drugs, as Director Weaver pointed out, that are actually in the home. And I think it's an important message that Oklahoma is sending to people that there's something that we can do. Let's provide our patients and elderly with a tool that they can use so that they don't become an unsuspecting victim.
Director Weaver, I want to get your comment on that. And as well, you know, as she was speaking, I was thinking schools. You have schools where, you know, little Sally might need a prescription, and the school nurse or counselor might have it, but it's just sitting in a drawer, in an unlocked drawer, or sitting on a desk or something. Is this sort of technology, the fingerprint technology, is it, as Lorraine suggested, really applicable to the elderly who don't want to use some sort of key system? And would it be a good fit for schools and daycares and other such institutions?
Well, I think that any time you have any types of substances, whether it be at a daycare or a school or whatever, I think that many times corporately there's systems in place to protect in a very broad sense, especially nursing homes. I mean, we register those type of individuals, so I think that it sometimes hopefully the controls and how can you stop an individual nurse from taking that hydrocodone pill rather than giving it to that helpless patient? I think that is really personal theft is our biggest problems, at least here in Oklahoma. I think sometimes we have to, and I'm faced this really statewide constantly. I think sometimes not only in Oklahoma but in America, we have to take a personal responsibility for our actions. And that is, it's one thing to say, well, you know, it's just a corporate problem, or it's a school problem, or it's some of this. We've got these big problems in nursing homes. And I'd submit to you that we have problems with all those. Trust me, we have multiple investigations on every level. But the bottom line is what I want is a personal, individual responsibility in the homes of Oklahomans. And that is to say, listen, I can't do a thing oftentimes about somebody else, but I can sure take care of myself and I can take care of my own home. It's easy, again, to say, hey, what about my neighbor across the street? Well, when you don't even have one in your own house. So I think this is an individual effort. I think that for this agency, it's target. It's a very strategic strike. It's not an incremental strike. It's a strategic strike on our elderly. I would like to get multiple boxes in. I'd like to home in every one of our elderlies in Oklahoma. But it's a strategic strike, one house at a time, making a difference. I don't think of it corporately. I think that those problems are additional issues that we could spend months on, but I think this is an individual issue.
I agree. Lorraine, do you have anything to say to that?
It doesn't take a lot to make your home a safe environment, and I think every American has to take the initiative. But I think one of the biggest problems is awareness. Most parents are still not aware of the extent of the issue, right, until it becomes a problem for them, until their child faces this addiction. So I think overall we can do a better job of providing a better awareness to parents, to families, and people like Kris, you know, telling his story about his experience. Yeah. I mean, he's really why we're doing this. He was your typical 13-year-old boy growing up and affected by peer pressure, and 17 years on, he's still dealing with addiction. So I think if people like him come forward, bravely come forward and tell their story, that can have a huge impact, because parents don't realize the extent of the potential danger. I mean, these things are statistically more dangerous than a gun. And everybody
Kris,
thinks about locking up a gun.
No, finish your point, Lorraine.
No, I'm just saying that you automatically think about locking up guns in the home and keeping them away from children. But parents don't automatically think about locking up prescription medications. And we have to change their mindset. And Director Weaver made the point, it's personal responsibility. But the reason why people aren't that responsible is because these are trusted drugs. A doctor prescribes them. Oh, they have to be safe because they come from a doctor. So really the point is making people more aware about the extent of the issue and the danger of these drugs, so that they automatically think if they're prescribed an opioid, I better get a lockbox to put these things, to secure these things in my home, just like they would do with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. And Kris, did your parents ever suspect that you were involved in prescription drug abuse?
Did they what? Were they aware of it?
Yeah, were they aware of it? Did they suspect you?
Not until it was a problem.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It took probably, a good year or two before they really noticed that I was really straying away.
And to me, that's the part of this conversation that's so relevant. It's so preventable. It is so preventable. A drug safe in your home that keeps everything locked up like this allows parents to control the situation beyond the point of, well, I think I have good kids. That's irrelevant to the conversation. Why would you want to risk it when you have over 100,000 deaths due to prescription drugs every single year? Lorraine, give us the website where people can get the safe.
It's rxdrugsafe.com. And I see the show, we're giving people a $50 coupon. It's the coupon code is Tolley, Tolley. So if they put that in the checkout, they can get a $50 discount for the purchase.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you so much. Folks, I urge you to go to this site. I get it, this is a conversation that has to do with a product. You know what? Yeah, it is. It is. It's absolutely a conversation that has to do with the product, because another product, prescription drugs, are being abused every single day. Every single day. 2,500 kids will try them for the first time today. 2,500 more tomorrow. So yeah, this is about a product. It's a product that you need to get and you need to put in your home. Go to rxdrugsafe.com. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Director Weaver, thank you. Kris, thank you for being brave. I applaud your effort, man. And Lorraine, of course, thank you for bringing this to everybody's attention. Folks, that does it for the first hour. Second hour, right around the corner. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.